What they never told you about growing old in America. It was a freezing night in Minneapolis when I saw her. She must have been in her early 80s, bundled in a faded winter coat, hunched over a coffee counter at a 24-hour gas station. Her silver hair was tucked into a knit cap. Her hands, thin and shaking, restocked coffee lids and wiped down sticky tables. It was 2 a.m. Not because she couldn't sleep. Not because she wanted something to do. She was working. Because she had to. And as I sat in my car watching her through the window, a single question kept repeating in my mind. How did we let this happen? America, the land of opportunity, of retirement plans, pensions, and promises. How did aging here become a quiet fight for survival? For millions of older adults, the golden years aren't golden at all. They are gray, stretched thin between medical bills, shrinking savings, and the rising cost of everything. And here's the truth we don't talk about enough. Money doesn't buy happiness, but in old age, it buys freedom. Freedom to rest. Freedom to say no. Freedom to live with dignity. Today, I want to take you through 7 emotional truths about money and aging in America. These aren't theories. They are real stories, lived by real people. Stories that might sound like your neighbors, your sisters, or even your own. If you're over 50, this message is for you. 1. Without financial security, there is no safety net, only fear. In all my years advising older adults from downtown Chicago to rural Tennessee, I've seen a pattern. When people think about retirement, they picture sunshine, grandkids, and morning walks. But for many, it turns into late-night shifts, skipped prescriptions, and quiet fear. Take Mrs. Lillian Moore, age 78, from Akron, Ohio. She lives alone in a small apartment just a few miles from where she used to teach elementary school. She never married. No kids. No pension. Her Social Security check is just enough to cover rent and utilities, but not the medication she needs for her rheumatoid arthritis. I've got 2 choices, she told me during a home visit. Either I take my pills and skip a meal, or I eat and hope my hands hold out. That's not a choice. That's survival. And she's not alone. Every year, thousands of seniors across the U.S. face the same impossible decisions. They don't talk about it. They are too proud. But behind closed doors, they are breaking. A man in Dallas mows lawns at 73 because he can't afford his insulin. A woman in Oregon skips physical therapy for her hip replacement because Medicare only covers so much. A couple in Florida sells their furniture piece by piece just to keep the lights on. And yet, when they were younger, they gave everything they had to their jobs, their families, their communities. They paid taxes. They volunteered. They raised kids. Still, they were never taught how to protect themselves in old age. Here's what I wish every American knew. Old age isn't hard because we grow weak. It's hard because we don't prepare. And without financial security, aging turns from a natural chapter into a constant emergency. So what can you do? Start by asking, do I have enough saved to cover a year of medical emergencies? If I lost my mobility tomorrow, could I afford help at home? If I outlive my spouse, could I survive on one income? You don't need to panic. But you do need a plan. Whether you're 52 or 72, it's never too late to change your story. It starts with awareness. Then action. Even saving $50 a month or cutting one expense could become your safety net tomorrow. Because here in America, your independence is only as strong as your financial foundation. And no one deserves to feel powerless just because they live too long. In the next message, I'll share the emotional story of a mother in New Jersey who gave everything to her children only to find herself asking for permission just to buy groceries in her own home. It's a powerful lesson on why money gives you more than freedom, it gives you your voice. Are you ready? Let's continue. 2. Money protects you from needing to ask permission in your own home. When you've spent your life giving, raising children, caring for parents, sacrificing your dreams for the sake of others, you expect, at the very least, to be treated with respect in your later years. But what happens when all you gave leaves you with nothing left for yourself? That's what happened to Mrs. Evelyn Thompson, a 74-year-old widow from Trenton, New Jersey. She spent her life working as a part-time librarian and raising 2 sons. Her husband passed away when the youngest was only 6, and Evelyn never remarried. She took on extra shifts, skipped vacations, and lived modestly so her boys could grow up safe and educated. When they became adults, she gave them everything, paid the down payment for one son's first home, co-signed a business loan for the other. And when her arthritis got worse and she could no longer manage the stairs in her 2-story home, her sons invited her to live with them. It seemed like the right thing. Family taking care of family. But here's what no one talks about. Love alone is not always enough. At first, things were fine. But slowly, Evelyn began to notice a shift. She started hearing phrases like, "Mom, do you really need that prescription? Let me check our budget before you turn up the heat. Didn't we just buy you new shoes last year?" It wasn't cruelty. It was control disguised as care. Suddenly, she was no longer the matriarch. She was a dependent. A burden. A guest in the house she helped fund. One evening, Evelyn confessed something to me during a counseling session. "I raised my children to be independent. I never thought I'd be the one asking for grocery money." This story is far too common. In the US, an increasing number of seniors are moving in with their adult children not because they want to, but because they have no choice. And without financial independence, it becomes almost impossible to maintain authority, privacy, or basic personal dignity. You begin to ask instead of decide. You wait for permission. You avoid conflict. You hide your needs, for fear of being too much. But this isn't how old age should feel. You deserve to choose what you eat, when you sleep, what doctor you see, and when you visit your friends without worrying who might think you're asking for too much. Money doesn't guarantee happiness, but it guarantees options. It lets you say yes when you want to say yes and no when you mean no. I'm not saying don't love your children. I'm saying don't confuse love with security. Because even the most devoted children can struggle under the weight of financial responsibility. And even the most loving homes can become places of quiet tension when resources run dry. So how do you protect yourself? Build a modest emergency fund that's yours alone. Keep a separate checking account. Don't give away every asset, especially your house, unless you fully understand the consequences. Have honest conversations about boundaries before moving in with family. And if you're a parent still in your 50s or 60s, start thinking ahead now. What will your living arrangement look like in 20 years? How much independence do you want to keep? How much control are you willing to give up? Your life after retirement is not a charity case. It's still your life. And that life deserves space, voice, and freedom no matter where you live. In the next message, we'll explore the painful consequences of giving too much for too long, and how a mother's unconditional sacrifice can sometimes leave her with empty hands and a broken heart. Stay with me. The truth may be hard, but it might also save your future. 3. When you give everything to your children and leave nothing for yourself. There's a particular kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from illness or betrayal. It comes from love. A kind of love that gives and gives until there's nothing left. And one day, you realize you've built everyone's future except your own. Let me tell you about Mrs. Angela Ramirez, now 81, who lives in a quiet suburb outside San Antonio, Texas. Angela was a single mother of 3. Her husband passed away in a car accident when she was 40. With no insurance, no savings, and no time to grieve, she rolled up her sleeves and went to work full-time at a textile factory, taking extra cleaning jobs on weekends to make ends meet. She never once asked for help. She raised her kids with discipline and love, paid off the mortgage on a modest 3-bedroom home, and somehow sent all 3 children to college. When they graduated, she gifted them everything she had. She sold her gold necklace to help her eldest put a down payment on a house. She cashed in her tiny 401k to help her daughter open a beauty salon. She signed over the family home to her youngest, thinking it would make things easier later on. Then, at 73, her health began to decline. Arthritis made walking painful. She struggled with fatigue and shortness of breath. She didn't want to be a burden. So she stayed quiet. But the truth was, she had nothing left, no savings, no home, and no legal rights to the roof over her head. One Sunday afternoon, while watching her grandchildren in the living room, her daughter-in-law came in with a forced smile and said, "Mom, maybe you should think about moving in with Rosa for a while. We are a little tight on space right now." That was the beginning of the shuffle. From one child's home to another. No room of her own. No place to belong. No voice in the household. She told me once, tears filling her eyes. "I gave them everything. But now I feel like I'm in the way." This story isn't unique. I've met hundreds of Angelas. Parents who sacrifice endlessly because that's what love does. But sacrifice without boundaries can backfire. Because when you give away everything, you give away your leverage, your choices, and sometimes your dignity. I say this not to scare you, but to protect you. You can love your children and still protect your future. You can give and still keep something for yourself. Here's what I tell every parent nearing retirement. Never sign over your home unless you understand the long-term consequences. Keep at least one financial account in your name only. Set limits with generosity. Help, but don't deplete. Talk openly with your children about your own future needs, not just theirs. And most importantly, remember that you matter too. Your health, your comfort, your sense of peace, these are not optional. They are the foundation for everything else. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to invest in yourself, especially when you've spent a lifetime investing in others. Because here's the truth. If you don't care for your future, no one else can do it for you. In the next message, I'll show you how financial independence doesn't just protect you, it opens the door to joy, freedom, and a second life filled with new possibilities. Let's talk about the life you can still design, no matter your age. 4. With financial independence, you can live the life you actually want. Growing older doesn't have to mean shrinking your dreams. In fact, the years after 60 can be the most liberating time of your life if you've prepared for them. Let me introduce you to Mr. Harold Jenkins, 76, from Asheville, North Carolina. He worked 40 years as a high school music teacher. Never made a fortune. Never owned a luxury car. But he made one important decision in his early 50s that changed everything. He started saving small, steady, and consistently. He set aside $200 a month into a retirement fund. He paid off his home before 65. He downsized his lifestyle when others were upgrading. And today, he lives with a quiet kind of freedom. Every Thursday, Harold hosts a jazz night with his retired buddies. Every spring, he travels, nothing extravagant, just weekend drives to places he always wanted to see. He takes photography classes at the community college. He even learned how to make sourdough bread. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. "I may walk slower now," he told me once with a laugh, "but I've never lived more freely." That is the gift of financial independence. Because here's the truth most people don't realize until it's too late. Money in old age isn't about status. It's about options. It lets you decide where you want to live, what food you want to eat, what kind of healthcare you receive, what passions you still want to explore. Without money, aging becomes reactive. You wait for others to make decisions. But with money, aging becomes intentional. You choose how to spend each day. And yes, there are sacrifices along the way. It means passing up on things in your 40s and 50s so you can breathe easier in your 70s and 80s. But trust me, it's worth it. Because when you're older, peace becomes more valuable than possessions. And nothing brings peace like knowing you're not a burden, not at the mercy of anyone, and not waiting for permission to enjoy your life. So ask yourself, what brings me joy? What have I postponed for too long? And what steps can I take today financially to make room for that joy tomorrow? You may not be able to control how fast time moves. But you can control what you do with the time you have left. In the next message, I'll share a deeper insight into what it truly means to prepare not just with money, but with mindset so that your older years are not about survival, but about significance. Let's keep walking this path together. 5. Your future depends on the choices you make today. There's a moment in life, usually somewhere between 60 and 75, when you stop and ask, what now? The children are grown. The house is quieter. The phone doesn't ring as often. And for the first time in decades, your life belongs to you again. But that freedom, that peace, that dignity only exists if you've made space for it. Because the truth is, aging isn't just about having enough money. It's about having the mindset to protect yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable. Let me tell you about Ruth and Samuel Green, both retired nurses in their early 70s living in Portland, Oregon. They were always generous parents. They helped their 2 daughters with down payments, student loans, even free childcare for the grandkids. But one thing they never did. They never gave away everything. They kept their finances separate. They had honest, sometimes awkward conversations about what they could and couldn't provide. They set firm, loving boundaries. One day, their younger daughter asked if they could sign over their home to help her qualify for a mortgage. They said no. Not because they didn't love her, but because they knew. We must take care of ourselves so we don't become your burden later. That level of clarity takes courage. Because for many older adults, saying no to your children feels like a betrayal. But it's not. It's an act of long-term love. The most powerful shift you can make as you grow older is this. Stop thinking of financial planning as selfish. Start seeing it as self-respect. You owe it to the person you'll become 10, 15, 20 years from now. Because let's face it, life doesn't always follow the plan. Your health can change overnight. Your spouse may pass away before you. The child you hoped would care for you might live in another state or face struggles of their own. And the government programs you're counting on may not stretch as far as you expect. Hope is not a plan. Love is not a retirement strategy. So here's what I want you to remember. Keep learning about money even if you're retired. Review your insurance, wills, and healthcare directives. Know what assistance you qualify for and what you don't. Stay active mentally, emotionally, and financially. Make decisions now so no one has to make them for you later. Your golden years are not just about staying alive. They are about living with agency, with voice, with purpose. When you honor your own needs, you give your family a gift. The gift of not having to worry. The gift of not having to choose between their lives and yours. The gift of peace. In the next message, we'll explore one of the most overlooked emotional truths about money, how having enough helps you avoid shame, resentment, and emotional exhaustion in your final years. You won't want to miss it. 6. Without financial strength, you may lose more than money, you may lose respect. There's a kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't scream. It doesn't show up on X-rays. But it lingers in every small hesitation, every quiet sigh, every moment you feel invisible in your own family. It's the pain of losing your place. Let me tell you about Mr. Walter Hammond, age 83, living with his eldest son's family in Sacramento, California. He moved in after a fall left him needing help with meals and stairs. At first, it felt like a blessing. The grandkids were joyful. His son and daughter-in-law seemed happy to have him. But little things started to change. The thermostat was suddenly too expensive to touch. The fridge was full of food, but not the kind he liked. He overheard comments meant as jokes about him being extra weight on the grocery bill. He wanted to contribute, but he had nothing left. No pension, no savings, just Social Security that barely covered his medications. One afternoon, while asking for help getting to the doctor, his daughter-in-law snapped. "Do you know how much we are already doing for you?" That sentence shattered him. He told me later. I didn't expect luxury. I just didn't expect to feel like I'm in the way. And that, my friend, is the brutal reality for many seniors in America today. Even in loving families, when financial strain enters the picture, dignity is often the first thing to go. Not because people are cruel, but because stress wears down compassion. Because when money is tight, patience runs thinner. Because dependency, no matter how justified, can quietly shift relationships from mutual respect to quiet resentment. And here's the worst part. When this happens, the person who suffers most is you, the parent, the grandparent, the elder who spent your life giving, only to feel like you no longer belong. But it doesn't have to be this way. Financial strength doesn't just buy medicine or meals. It buys your voice. Your boundaries. Your place at the table. When you can cover your own costs, you're not asking. You're choosing. You're participating, not pleading. It's not about power. It's about peace. Peace in knowing you won't be a burden. Peace in knowing you won't be shamed. Peace in knowing your worth is not dependent on anyone's mood or wallet. So if you're still in your 50s, 60s, or early 70s, now is the time to act. Don't assume your kids will be financially or emotionally able to care for you. Don't put yourself in a position where you must beg for dignity. Build your own financial lifeboat, even if it's small. Because when you don't prepare, someone else pays. And that payment often comes in the form of broken relationships, silence at the dinner table, and the quiet ache of no longer being seen. In the next and final message, I'll take you somewhere deeper into the kind of legacy that only financial independence can make possible. A legacy of choice, of grace, and of meaning in the last chapter of life. Let's walk there together. 7. When you have enough, you can choose how you want to be remembered. There comes a moment, often quiet, often unexpected, when you begin to wonder. What will I leave behind? Not the furniture. Not the heirlooms. Not the savings account. But the memory. The feeling. The way your family speaks about you when you're gone. And here's what I've learned after years of working with older adults. The greatest legacy you can leave is not just love, it's stability. It's clarity. It's peace. Let me introduce you to Mrs. Elaine Brooks, 85, from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. She never made headlines. Never earned a six-figure salary. But she built something rare: retirement on her terms. Elaine was a school cafeteria worker. Modest income, modest life. But she lived below her means. Saved what she could. And when her husband passed, she downsized and created a trust, not just to distribute money, but to protect her family from conflict. She prepaid her funeral. Left letters to her grandchildren. Made clear decisions about medical care. And most importantly, she sat each child down and said, "I've done my part. I want you to live freely, not worrying about me." That is grace. That is power. When you have enough, you don't just survive. You lead. You model wisdom. You allow your children to grieve when the time comes, not scramble through paperwork, debt, or difficult choices. Too often, families fall apart after a parent passes. Why? Because there were no plans. No conversations. No clarity. Grief, combined with money stress, can turn even the most loving families into strangers. But when you've planned ahead, when you've taken care of yourself and your affairs, you leave your children with gratitude, not guilt. They remember your laughter, not your medical bills. They speak of your life, not your burdens. They carry your story, not your struggles. So ask yourself now, have I prepared my affairs in a way that reflects who I am? Will my children feel peace or pressure when I'm gone? Am I still depending on hope, or do I have a real plan? You don't need wealth. You need intention. You need a roadmap. You need to recognize that your later years are not the end of your life, they are the essence of your legacy. And there is still time. Time to act. Time to prepare. Time to protect your dignity, your voice, and your memory. You've walked through life giving, sacrificing, caring. Now, give yourself the final gift: freedom in aging, and peace in goodbye. Let this be the chapter you write with intention. Dear friend, if you've come this far, I want to thank you. You've just taken a powerful step, a step toward truth, self-respect, and a future you deserve. Let this be your reminder. You are not too old to change the outcome. You are not too late to start protecting your peace. You are not wrong for wanting freedom. Your age doesn't disqualify you from purpose. It gives you the wisdom to live with clarity. So please start now. Talk to someone you trust. Make a small plan. Write down your goals. And most of all, take care of yourself the way you've always taken care of others. Because the best way to love your family is to make sure they never have to rescue you. If this message moved you, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment below to share your story or simply say how this made you feel. And please, follow our other videos for more life-changing insights about aging with grace, dignity, and joy. Thank you for listening. May today bring you strength, peace, and the quiet pride of knowing you are still the author of your story.